G'day mates, in today's video we're going to talk about who is now officially out of FNCS, and there are some big names. We have Scoped and Blake, we have Reet and Rex. I also want to talk about who is now straight through into the grand finals. Equally huge names like Benjy and Savage, Arkram and Epic Whale. There's a lot to talk about. Let's just jump into it. All right, let's talk about who did and didn't qualify, because this is important, because the top matters, because top 8 from today went straight through into the grand finals. They skipped semifinals altogether, but we do have some absolutely huge names who are now completely out of FNCS. They don't get another chance to play. And let's go through some of those. The major upsets today who did make it out of round 2 to make it into round 3 was Nebs and Hellfire, who are now completely out. There is no semifinals for them because they did not make a round 3 in either of the qualifiers. They are done. So one of the favorites, one of almost everyone's favorites to potentially win FNCS, or at the very least make it to grand finals, they're completely out. It was really upsetting. It was hard to see. They went down very, very close today. I think they came like low 60s, so they're only a few places away from getting into the finals, and that's what this team does best. They are set lobby specialists. When they make set lobbies, they perform, and they have done it time and time again in this Cash Cup, and they're one of the teams that a lot of people are pointing towards to say the format just wasn't that good this FNCS. Pretty much everyone knows it wasn't that great. It was really rushed, but a lot of the teams I'm going to talk about, like Reet and Rex and Mongrel and Mitra, you know, they W keyed, they tried to go super crazy, and people kind of understand why they didn't make it. But for teams like Nebs and Hellfire, it was really sad to see, because they were trying their best, they were playing really well, but the format just didn't allow for any inconsistency whatsoever. But it's done and done. They move on. They're actually handling it very maturely, so hats off to Nebs and Hellfire. We also had Saved and Rabbit sadly not make it. Saved was having some problems finding teammate earlier this season. Mariah, who left him, who was originally playing with, went on to play with Rifle and has actually come first in the qualifiers and is through into the grand finals. So it's sad to see Saved left behind, who is a phenomenal player, and I think him and Rabbit were actually looking pretty good. Their comms were good. I really thought they gelled well together as players, but unfortunately it wasn't meant to be. Their FNCS is now completely over. Moving on to NA East, we had Joji and Rokane, who did not make it into a single round 3, but because they placed so highly in round 2, there are only a few places off qualifying in both of them. They're going through into the semis guaranteed. Remember yesterday where I talked about consistency points? Because they didn't make a round 3, but they played so consistently in the round 2s, they will be going through. So don't worry, they're going to be in there, and set lobbies is where this team excels as well. We have Skittles and Tragic, similar situation, didn't make a single round 3, but because they placed so highly in the 2 round 2s, they're going through into semis. The one that's a bit sad though, Scoped and Blake, they did not make semifinals. They do not have enough consistency points. They are completely out of FNCS, and this is sad because it's 2 players who, you know, have been OGs, have been around in the scene for a really long time, are actually practicing, grinding the game and playing it properly, and it's sad to see them go down. These are the kind of people those conversations I've watched start to come around, and I hate to hear it because Scoped and Blake are 2 of my favorite people in the scene. I'm very personally biased towards them, but I think they know they just didn't play the best. But we'll see, maybe a new meta will fit them personally a lot better. I know personally Scoped and Blake don't particularly like the SMG meta like a lot of pros don't at the moment, so maybe they'll run it back next season. They have tried to play together quite a few times now. Potentially they'll find new teammates, but who knows. And the last one, the most interesting one, the one that I have the most to talk about, Reet and Rex not making it to the semifinals whatsoever. They are completely out. They don't have consistency points to lean back on. They didn't make it out of round 1 in the first qualifier, and today they didn't make it out of round 2. So what does this mean for Reet, and what happened? I don't usually tend to go into too much detail about stream sniping accusations in my videos. We've talked about it all before. We've talked about what Epic should maybe be able to do to stop it. What should Twitch be doing? What should the actual player be doing? Should they be playing with enforced delays? If they don't want to put a delay on and they get stream sniped, is it their own fault? We've discussed all that, and I really just couldn't be bothered for the drama. I'm just going to present it today because I think when we're talking about Reet and Rex not qualifying, it's a very big deal. I need to point out that Reet has made some accusations of himself getting stream sniped, showed some pretty suspicious clips of a team pushing them very strangely, consistently. Reet was live, and apparently the players were in the viewer list. Reet then went on to also have his power cut out and crash at the end of that game. So also I am going to put that one in there as well, because when we're breaking down people not doing well, I do want to present it from their side of the story. But like I've been talking about with Mongrel Mitra, and I mentioned with Rex and Reet the other day when they didn't qualify, they don't seem to really care that much about the game right now. So I don't think this is like super noteworthy. Yes, it's a huge deal to have Reet and Rex not in the finals, but I don't really think any anyone is that truly surprised. Reet's been playing a whole bunch of Madden. Rex has always been very, vocal about not playing the game that much, and they especially don't like the meta right now. Reet even tweeted out praying for Stingers to be gone next season. I know a lot of people are going to take that as an excuse. Oh, he's just blaming the meta for not doing well, but I think it's fine for pros to decide sometimes they don't like the game the way it is, and instead of trying to change it, if you have the, the financial ability to not have to grind this season, like you don't have literally bills to pay where you need to be placing, maybe just take a break and go again next season. It can be really good for your mental health. There's a lot of pros out there who aren't actually grinding the game constantly like a lot of people think. I know Reet streams Madden a lot, which leads a lot of people to think he's the only pro who's not grinding constantly, but all I ever see is like EU pros getting like Challenger in League of Legends and getting Radiant in Valorant, and they're all talking about Valorant constantly. So clearly a lot of pros still place phenomenally well playing other games, but I think this is just a GG go again for Reet and Rex. I'm not going to look into it too much more than that. It's going to be sad watching an NA West final without them, and I still want to celebrate the players who are up and coming and doing really well in the current meta, because yes, it's different. Yes, you can argue it's less skillful in a lot of ways, but ultimately you can't just take it away from the players that are grinding, are staying on top of their game, because if anything, maybe they're just showing better mental strength to be able to push through and still grind and still play. So I'm going to take it easy on Rex and Reet the same way I did with Mongrel and Mitra. I think the community's piling on them a lot, putting a lot of pressure on them to perform when I don't really think they had that much of an expectation themselves. They didn't seem super disappointed. I guess they just take the rest of the season off and we see how we go again next season. Now, let's move on to the fun part, the positives. Let's talk about who's qualified and going straight through into the grand finals, who's skipping semifinals altogether. And on the topic of semifinals, I'm going to make a big video breaking down who's dropping where, who's in semifinals and all of that, but I need to wait till the actual series point leaderboards are official, and then I want to wait a little bit for teams to actually claim where they're going to make a proper list and a proper video. I don't want to do it too early and then half of it changes like has happened in the past. So don't worry, that video is coming, okay? Now, let's kick off with who qualified. Remember, this is the last round of the qualifiers. It is round 3, qualifier 2. So the top 8 teams are going to go automatically through to grand finals. So top 8 is what was really, really important. Kicking off with EU, we had Pink and Anas walk away with a slim victory on 167 points, getting 6 matches, 2 wins, just beating out Benjy, Fishy, and Mr. Savage, someone that everyone's very, very excited to see at the top of the leaderboard. I do think Benjy and Savage potentially could have won this one as well. Their last game was their worst game, a 3 elim 34th, and it was pretty clear at that point they didn't really care that much. They know they'd already qualified. They were just having some fun, and I'm very happy to see all these teams at the top of the leaderboard, but seeing Benjy and Savage in the grand finals is obviously going to make everyone very, very happy. We then had Nailu and Flixie Buka, a pretty underrated team as far as I'm aware, really popping off and performing well. They've been doing well in a lot of games at the moment. Like, I started paying attention to them a couple weeks ago, and now they're very, very much on my radar. We had T-Chips and Art Skill Riley. They played phenomenally the whole tournament. They actually dropped off the pace towards the end. A 1 elim 21st and a 0 elim 26th in their last 2 games were their worst performances. Before that, they were in the top 2 the entire time. We had Kiriachi and Stormy Right, who remember won round 1 and round 2, playing insanely well in round 2. I haven't talked that much about the round 2 qualifiers because, again, if they make it into round 3, that's all that really matters. I keep saying the same thing. If you win or you come, 50th, it's the same thing, but they absolutely dominated the round 2. They played 7 matches, winning 4 of them, and also had a 10 elim second. So almost 5 wins out of 7 matches. They had a 3rd place and a 9th place. Like, look at this match history. Like, that is absolutely disgusting. So they were coming in on a very, very dominant streak. So no surprise to see they continued that through. We had Hookah and Zeston. We had Ju and Stompy. It's so great to see one of the OGs up there already in the grand finals for Stompy. And then PKR and Mappy. We unfortunately, despite a really good last game, a 3 elim 6th for Link and Default didn't get them into the top 8, unfortunately. We also had big names like Vortex and Janice, Seti and Chapix, Joe and Vino, all just outside the top 8, but they will be in the semifinals as well. Moving on to NA East, we had DGen and Iomzo on 226 points, an insanely dominant performance in the finals. DGen and Iomzo showing what they can do when they're uncontested. We've seen them contested a lot by Knifer specifically, but when they're uncontested, they pop off. Remember, in a lot of the Cash Cups as well, they've been contested by Pink and Anas, who quite often qualify on NA East from EU. And I did say in my prediction video earlier, about a week ago, that this team would absolutely dominate FNCS because no EU teams could drop on them. They get uncontested once and they get a like 80-point lead on second. Second place was Aviv and Squish, one of the most underrated teams in NA East right now. They are placing top 10 in almost every Duo Cash Cup finals. I'm so happy to see them pop off here and go straight through to the grand finals. We had Spade and Chimp, Walkers and Golden, who again, you're probably right to say you haven't really heard about them because neither have I. Golden himself actually has $0 earned and he's straight through into the grand final. So really awesome to see an underrated duo pop off here. We had Oliver OG and Playerfire come in fifth, a team that a lot of people have been discussing. A lot of people discussing their team chemistry, saying that, you know, again, they seem to not really be getting along the best on stream. Sometimes there's a little bit of friction, you know, they argue, but ultimately it's working. And there's a lot of teams out there who have a lot of friction who still perform really well and dominate. You guys know Playerfire has been doing incredibly well in solos, so great to see him partner up with OG and perform here. We had Jampa and Dukes come in sixth, who clutched it up massively with a 4 elim win in their final game to clutch up the qual, and they had a 5 elim fifth in their second last game. So they had a huge jump up to make their way into this one. It is worth mentioning though, they did it out of uncontested chonkers. I only mention that because they're not going to get that in the grand finals. Miro and Boog are already going there, and like I mentioned earlier in the video, it looks like they're going to have potentially Paper's team, if they qualify, maybe going there as well. So we also had D-Roller and Trashy, a personal favorite of mine. They got a 2 elim 6th and a 2 elim 11th in their last 2 games to clutch it up. And then Redux and Savage on 121 points in 8th place. It was Glace and Chucky in 9th, who just missed out by a single point, and then Slacks and Clarity G, who missed out also by a single point, tie-breaking for 9th. I felt especially bad for Slacks and Clarity because they got keyed very heavily by Centered and Cold, who, if you guys didn't see, had a pretty rough tournament. They just really didn't care that much because their first few games they went down getting keyed aggressively by the team landing at Sleepy with them, and at that point they were already in semifinals, so they might as well go for big games to get top 8 or bust. And in the last game they did run into Slacks and Clarity. Also Glace and Chucky, shout out to them, they are such a consistent team. They came 9th in this round 3 and 11th in the last one, so only a few places away, qualifying twice. Feel really bad for them. Yeah, Threats and Users up there as well, so really good NA East final. And moving over to NA West, something we haven't seen in a while that has been surprising everyone. We have Epic Whale and Arkram back on top of a leaderboard in first place on 216 points, winning 3 of their 6 games. Reet and Rex struggled, we're not going to see them, but Arkram and Epic Whale are very much back. We have Batman Booger and Wheels, one of my personal favorite teams in the world, not just NA West. I love this team, I've hyped them up a whole bunch. You've got that typical Boomer Zoomer combo, Batman Booger, who's a big up-and-coming slayer. You partner him with Wheels, an absolute OG GOAT, and I love how this team is looking coming into the finals. You have Vanillas and Wale in third, Paz and Rays, Lime and Chip, Zuko and Digital, Krizux and Yelty, which is so good to see. Yelty obviously being a massive content creator for the Hispanic community in Fortnite for a really long time. Love to see him in the grand finals. That is going to bring a lot of attention to the game from the Hispanic community, as it always does. And then we had Salvo and FJAA. All right, guys, that does it for another video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please chuck a like on it, subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and I'll see you in the next one.